Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, December 15th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. They are on the front lines and first in line for the COVID-19 vaccine. We're talking about hospital workers who've had to care for and sadly watch as people die. Just moments ago, the county announced 32 more deaths and close to 1,900 more cases. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman shows us the historic process to end the pandemic in San Diego County.
I didn't know I was going to be the first one, but I'm really excited.
COVID-19 vaccinations are officially underway in San Diego. Rady Children's emergency room nurse, Brittany Randall, was one of the first frontline healthcare workers to roll up her sleeve.
It was great. The person that administered it was awesome, and I'm actually afraid of needles, and I didn't even feel it, so.
Randall was told to come back in 3 weeks for the second dose of the vaccine.
It's a new beginning for myself, my family, for everybody here.
Sonia Garcia works with coronavirus patients at Rady's. She was overcome with emotion after getting vaccinated.
Last night when I got the news that I was coming here, I really got very emotional and happy because this is the new beginning for all of us. It's really heartwarming. It really is.
Garcia says the vaccine represents a new beginning.
I did it for my family, and I did it for all our children here at Rady Children's also. I'm hoping that our lines get lesser down at the COVID tent.
Earlier today, Rady Children's received first doses of the vaccine.
Inside here is the box that contains the vaccine.
They have been designated a regional storage site by state officials.
The vaccine. So the vaccine represents hope for our staff and our community, and we're very excited to be a part of it and help distribute it.
Other hospital systems like UC San Diego Health are getting their first shipments too and are planning vaccinations for this week.
We will begin immunizing tomorrow. That's our effort and should be in full swing by Friday and going 7 days a week.
UC San Diego health officials expect to vaccinate up to 100 staff per day. They're hoping to have all their frontline healthcare workers vaccinated within about a month.
It's not mandatory. We think that most of our employees, because they have interest in both their patients' well-being and their own well-being, that they'll be excited about it.
I wish you could see me smiling underneath my mask.
How quickly frontline healthcare workers get vaccinated also depends on how much vaccine is available. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
And today, Governor Gavin Newsom said another 400,000 doses of Pfizer's would arrive in California next week, and it requires 2 doses spaced 21 days apart. But the question on everybody's mind, when can I receive the shots? KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer breaks down the timeline.
The exact timeline for COVID-19 vaccine rollout is not set in stone, but the order of people who will receive the shots in California will follow the CDC's 3-phased approach. Phase 1 has 3 sub-tiers to account for the limited supply of COVID-19 vaccines available. In Phase 1A, California will focus its efforts on vaccinating its critical populations, including healthcare personnel and long-term care facility residents. Phase 1B will come afterward and vaccinate essential workers, some of which include firefighters, police, corrections officers, and those in the education, utilities, transportation, and food and agriculture sectors. Phase 1C will then focus on vaccinating adults older than 65 or adults with high-risk medical conditions. As vaccine supplies increase, Phase 2 will take effect. During this stage, there will be a focus on ensuring access to vaccines for all critical populations who were not vaccinated in Phase 1 and providing access to the vaccine for the general population. In Phase 3, when there is a sufficient supply of doses, the goal will be ensuring equitable vaccination access across the entire population and helping communities with low coverage. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
And there's more good news on the horizon. Today, the Food and Drug Administration confirmed that Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine appeared safe and highly effective. Its distribution across the country could come as soon as next week, pending independent advisory committee reviews by the FDA and CDC and authorization by the FDA commissioner. Governor Gavin Newsom said that California is expecting to get 672,000 doses of Moderna's vaccine by end of December.
We are in a sprint, not a marathon now. Sprint. Next 45, next 60 days. It's not a permanent state by no stretch of the imagination. Light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to come out of this stronger than ever. Mark my words.
The governor cautioned, however, that we are experiencing the worst surge of the pandemic, and today more than 32,000 coronavirus cases were reported across the state. The current ICU capacity for the Southern California region is just 1.7. As the COVID-19 vaccine begins to roll out across the country, many employers will face a difficult question. Can they force their employees to get the vaccine? KPBS reporter John Carroll went in search of the answer.
They are nothing short of a miracle of modern science, vaccines for this deadly pandemic that would have taken years to perfect before the new mRNA method being used by Pfizer and Moderna, among others, along with continued vigilance to the all-too-familiar public safety measures, masks, physical distancing, hand washing. Health experts say the vaccines are our way out of this nightmare. But it's likely some people, for a variety of reasons, will refuse the vaccine. So can employers force them to take it? San Diego employment law attorney Dan Eaton says the answer is a qualified yes.
Employers cannot require employees who have medical conditions that would be complicated by the vaccine, and they cannot require employees who have bona fide religious objections to taking the vaccine.
But the number of people who fall into those two categories is expected to be quite small. For everybody else,
employers do have broad latitude as part of their duty to maintain a safe and healthful workplace.
Keith Maddox with the San Diego and Imperial Counties Labor Council says while an important function of unions is to protect workers from what they see as onerous requirements of employers, this case is different.
And so, especially safety and health is one of the most critical things that we have discussions around, is protecting the safety of workers inside of those work sites. And that's definitely what this is.
Maddox says most union members he knows will want the vaccine. And beyond that, he says a lot of union workers are going to play a critical role in getting the vaccines into people's arms.
CVS's and Walgreens, our members, our union members in those work sites are all going to be part of the process of actually giving vaccines.
Back to the law and the question of what employers can do about people who refuse to take the vaccine, the ones who don't have health conditions or sincere religious objections. Dan Eaton says short of termination, employers have another option.
Simply to require employees to continue to wear personal protective equipment, masks, face shields, other kinds of things.
But Eaton says in the final analysis, science moves faster than the law. And he says the acceptance of science and what it tells us about these new vaccines should be the primary focus of society as we move toward the end of the era of COVID-19. John Carroll, KPBS News.
A group of Latino leaders in San Diego are calling for more support for their communities. KPBS reporter Max Nadler tells us this comes after new county data shows the coronavirus has disproportionately impacted Latino people.
3 Latino mayors and other elected officials spoke out on Tuesday morning after new data shows that Latinos are struggling during the COVID-19 pandemic. The organization Mana de San Diego shared data from the San Diego Association of Governments. It shows that half of Latino residents in San Diego live in an area with higher than average COVID numbers. And over 50% of all COVID cases in San Diego are from Latino residents, who only make up 35% of the population. In addition to the health impact, the pandemic has crushed job sectors filled with Latinas.
The hardest hit sectors in the economy were tourism, retail, and education. So if you look at the numbers, the education, retail, and personal services and tourism industry represents 80% of the job losses.
Job losses have been felt hardest in the lowest paying jobs. Of those making between $27,000 to $60,000, the unemployment rate is only 4.2%. But for those making less than $27,000, over 21% are now unemployed.
Latinas so often go unseen, but we are in fact the lowest paid of any demographic in California. We earn about 44 cents on the dollar of a white male counterpart.
The Latina leaders stress that any recovery for these communities will need to prioritize educational and training opportunities for the lowest paid workers in the state.
Reentry programs, focusing on community colleges and local universities to make sure that we're reaching out to the low-income population. They are the ones that need the retraining, population that make less than $27,000.
They also encourage Latinos to get vaccinated for COVID-19 as soon as they're eligible, to help protect a community that's been hit so hard by the virus. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
It's another stalemate on Capitol Hill, with Republicans and Democrats needing to work together to prevent the government from shutting down. Not just a spending package, but many Americans continue looking to lawmakers to pass a much-needed COVID-19 relief bill. Nadia Romero has the latest from Washington.
Another deadline looming for lawmakers to pass a bipartisan bill funding the government and possibly including COVID relief. Democrat Senator Joe Manchin spreading optimism.
We're not going home until it's done. The emergency relief package is strictly an emergency relief. It's not for long term. We have this package that gets us through the most difficult, challenging times, the first quarter of 2021.
But there are familiar sticking points. Democrats want at least $160 billion for state and local aid.
There are nurses and teachers, paramedics, police officers who are facing layoffs in municipalities, counties, and states around the country. Roughly 1.3 million have already been laid off.
Republicans want COVID-19 lawsuit protections for businesses.
People who did their best, acting in good faith, shouldn't have to face off all sorts of lawsuits from people who come and go after them.
A bipartisan group of lawmakers unveiled the text of a $908 billion compromise COVID relief plan Monday. The plan includes two bills, one for state and local aid and liability protection. The other bill includes extending jobless benefits, dollars for vaccine distribution, extending small business loans, amongst other measures. Senator Mitt Romney says he thinks Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will bring some sort of COVID relief package to the floor for a vote this week.
There are things in there I'm not wild about. There are things in there Democrats aren't wild about. But we came together.
In Washington, Nadia Romero, KPBS News.
At long last, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell publicly acknowledged that President Trump lost the election.
The Electoral College has spoken. So today I want to congratulate President-elect Joe Biden. The President-elect is no stranger to the Senate. He's devoted himself to public service for many years. I also want to congratulate the Vice President-elect, our colleague from California, Senator Harris. Beyond our differences, all Americans can take pride that our nation has a female Vice President-elect for the very first time.
Many Senate Republicans, though, still wouldn't recognize Biden's win even after yesterday's Electoral College vote. The San Diego County Democratic Party is withdrawing its request for a recount in an unusually tight Santee City Council race. Election workers spent all day yesterday manually recounting ballots in the race. The certified vote count ended with Republican Dustin Trotter beating Democrat Sam Hurst by just 5 votes. The tallies did not change after Monday's recount. Trotter has already been sworn in for a 4-year term on the council.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, more hospitals nationwide begin vaccinations as the number of COVID infections continue to spike. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Poway Unified School District announced today that it plans to suspend all in-person learning for 2 weeks after its winter break. The school board will vote on the matter at a public meeting on Thursday. The district made the decision in hopes to reduce the spread of COVID-19 after the holiday. It also expects staff shortages caused by another surge in coronavirus cases following the week of Christmas. The district expects to resume limited in-person instruction on Monday, January 18th. Recent data released by school districts show that while many students are falling behind during distance learning, English learners are among those suffering the most. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong spoke to teachers and experts about how hard the online learning environment is for these students.
Damian Patterson works with English learners in the Grossmont Union High School District. He said they're in an almost impossible situation.
Imagine myself going to another country and having to do what they're being asked to do in Arabic or having to do that in Mandarin. I would fail miserably, but that's what they're being asked to do.
Data compiled by the district show more failing grades across all student groups, but Patterson says English learners are getting D's and F's at disproportionately higher rates than their peers. And it's not just at Grossmont. Officials at Sweetwater Union High School District and Poway Unified School District see similar trends.
Learning a new language, as you were saying, even on an app, it's good and it works, but being in a class, being able to practice that language with your peers and have those engaging conversations and where you're using the language, that's by far the best way to learn and to help these students become successful.
Educators say this crisis is yet another example of the pandemic amplifying existing inequalities. Jorge Cuevas Antillon is the district advisor for curriculum and instruction of dual language and English learners at the San Diego County Office of Education.
The fact that students are getting D's and F's are probably a symptom of larger issues that are going on for these students in their lives.
In California's public schools, English learners are more likely to come from low-income families and experience homelessness and are less likely to graduate than their peers.
There's a lot of reasons why this category, which has to do with their linguistic background, is just one of the many hurdles that they are experiencing when they're trying to get an education, especially now.
That's why one teacher working with English learners says handing out grades to these students is only making things worse. Anna Monhe is an English language development resource teacher at Otay Ranch High School in the Sweetwater Union High School District.
It's unfair because the grades are assuming everyone's internet connection is equal and everybody's home life situation is equal. That they have a learning space in their home and they are, in quiet locations with no other obligations.
Monhe says she's doing her best to help non-bilingual teachers work with their students who only speak Spanish, but the virtual classroom puts up significant barriers.
Many students have never met me. So when I do outreach to them, they don't respond because they don't know who I am. They're new to the school, they've never met me. And so that opportunity is lost on them.
And Monhe says she often ends up helping both the students and their parents.
Under normal circumstances, I think one of the biggest challenges for ELD students is that they don't have a strong advocate because their parents are also English learners for the most part.
Back in Grossmont, Patterson says radical measures will be necessary to undo the damage the pandemic has done to English learners.
I personally feel like we're going to have to go back and start from the beginning in most cases, because a lot of these students come to us not being literate or fluent in English or literate in their L1 or their primary language, and they've had no educational access, I guess I'm trying to say, since March.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
San Diego Unified School District today launched its voluntary COVID-19 testing program for its students and staff. The tests will be administered on 10 elementary school campuses by UC San Diego Health. The schools were selected based on their higher local case rates. The goal is to test all students and staff who are regularly on campus every 2 weeks, with results in about 24 hours. Currently, only high-need students are participating in appointment-based in-person learning. California health officials released new guidelines for youth sports, whether it's school-related, community, or club sports. Competitions between teams will not be allowed until January 25th at the earliest. In the most restrictive purple tier, only outdoor, low-contact sports like golf and tennis are allowed to compete. In the red tier, baseball and cheerleading would be allowed. And in the orange tier, basketball, football, and soccer could resume. Because of the state's rules, many baseball and soccer teams have traveled to states like Arizona to play competitively.
It has left sports, youth sports in particular, no recourse but to start to look for options.
Players and teams are allowed to practice as long as they follow health and safety measures, including social distancing.
Our dry stretch of weather continues for a couple of more days, and we'll continue to see gradual warming into Wednesday, hump day. Well, after that, another trough swings through Thursday. That will bring in the onshore flow, and we could see a little drizzle, maybe a shower or two with that, and some gusty winds. That's out of here, and by the weekend, it's looking really nice. So Friday into the weekend should be much nicer. For tonight, we're down to 34 in Oceanside, 45 San Diego. Ramona's at 32 and El Cajon's at 39. Mount Laguna's down to 23, so a little cool out there. Looking at our weather on Wednesday, dry and seasonable conditions are expected. So as we take a look at the temperatures for you, we're at 69 Borrego Springs and Mount Laguna's at 60. Beautiful day in Escondido, Ramona, and El Cajon, low to mid 70s. San Diego's at 70 and Oceanside's at 69. Now as we take a look at Thursday, well, many areas inland will be dry from the mountains into the deserts, but west of the mountains, there could be some clouds and maybe a sprinkle or a shower or two. And the reason why is we have a trough that's going to be cruising through. There it is, right there. And it moves eastward during the day Thursday. So that's the system that could bring us some cooling and clouds and maybe a shower or two. So don't be surprised if that happens on Thursday. But once that trough just cruises out of here, nicer weather for the end of the week and the weekend. Inland areas, pleasant Wednesday, then the trough moves in Thursday, clouds, there may be a stray shower. And Friday into the weekend, looks really nice. Temperature is starting to rise up again. Now as we take a look into the mountains, that trough moving through, clouds and some wind Thursday. The weekend does see temperatures starting to creep up. And in the deserts, well, it looks like things would be rather uneventful. Pretty nice for the most part. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
California monarchs are in trouble. The western population of the orange, black, and white butterflies is crashing. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has the details.
The holiday weekend survey of monarch wintering sites only found 2,000 of the orange, black, and white butterflies. Hundreds of volunteers helped scour known sites along the Pacific coast.
We have monarch sites as far north as Mendocino County and down into Baja, Mexico.
Emma Pelton is a senior conservation biologist who's tracked the species for a number of years. She's alarmed by the latest findings.
The last 2 years, we were at all-time lows, just below 30,000 butterflies. So we knew they were in trouble, but we didn't expect a decrease to just about 2,000 monarchs. So we've had another order of magnitude decline.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says the butterflies deserve endangered species protection, but not until the agency resolves other priority projects. The San Diego Zoo's Paige Howarth says that might be too late for the western monarchs.
I think this is a warning to the greater population. This petition for listing was submitted in 2014. And here we are in 2020 with 2,000 butterflies, less than 2,000 butterflies that figured out how to get to overwintering sites.
There were 200,000 migrating monarchs just 3 years ago, and there were millions in the 1980s. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
A former foster child's baking is inspired by two things: giving back and family. In this pandemic profile, KPBS photojournalist Roland Lizarrando introduces us to Maya Matson, the owner of Maya's Cookies in Grantville.
A chocolate chip, a holiday sprinkle.
I had a very steady stream of clients and customers. We were slowly building our online sales. That was my goal for 2020. And once the pandemic hit and people were shopping from home and ordering online, we really started to see an increase in sales.
Let me do a peppermint, a pecan.
The first day that we saw an increase in sales was June 2nd, after the horrific death of George Floyd and all the social injustice that was brought to the forefront. People wanted to support Black-owned businesses, and we went from about 20 to 50 sales a day online to the numbers were climbing into the hundreds, and we were excited. We couldn't believe it. And we ended up having 10,000 orders in our queue. So my emotions went from happy and excited to scared to nausea and not being able to eat to all of a sudden me saying, okay, I can do this. Let me put my big girl pants on and get this done. That's my saying. I always say to myself. And so I figured that out within a couple of days how to tackle that. And I'm happy to say we were able to fulfill all of those orders. Our goal during the spike was to do 500 orders a day. So my son was in charge of this and keeping track of how many orders we got out. One of my goals when I started this business in 2015 was to be able to give back to the community. I am passionate about helping youth. We work with a local organization called Detour Fancy that empowers young women of color in underserved communities, and I'm so happy to say that our holiday tin, which is sitting here in front of me, portions of the sale of this holiday tin are going to that organization. The underrated white chocolate cranberry.
Oh, it's so good.
I know. When people talk about Maya's cookies, I want them to say, this is the best cookie I've ever had. It's delicious. I don't want them to say, this is the best vegan cookie I ever had. This is the best cookie.
And here's another look at today's top story. Healthcare workers at Rady Children's Hospital were the first in San Diego County to get the COVID-19 vaccine. The hospital received the first doses of the Pfizer vaccine this morning. Other hospital systems like UC San Diego Health are also getting their first shipments and are planning vaccinations for staff as soon as tomorrow. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.